To the right of the stage, ladies and gentlemen, the first public appearance of the newly renovated North Carolina Merci 40&8 boxcar. There it is. Ago, right here in Rowan County, 6th and 8th graders took part in a pilot program in North Carolina with a successful organization from Philadelphia called Silly City Artists. The students were creating artwork in their hometowns. Some visited here at the North Carolina Transportation Museum in order to be inspired. Anna Everhart is here. She chose the Merci Train car for her piece of that artwork. Seeing this piece and then learning the history of the Merci Train, Sherry Brown and Kim Lentz approached the museum about a grand event to celebrate the 70th anniversary of that car's arrival. The grand celebration would create partnerships with local businesses and organizations to hold events and fundraisers all over Rowan County with the themes of World War II, French culture, and most of all, gratitude. And today, all of that begins. 49 days of gratitude. It is a celebration of thanks. Would the Rowan County Veterans Honor Guard please advance the colors? DJ, Thank you. Ashton Williams from Cub Scout Pack 443 will now come forward to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Ashton. And now our national anthem, performed by Alexis Cowan with accompaniment by Adrian Smith.
o'er the land of the free and the home of
Please remain standing. Alina McNichol from Opera Carolina will now perform for us the French national anthem.
Allons enfants de la patrie, le jour de gloire est arrivé. Contre nous de la tyrannie, l'étendard sanglant élevé, l'étendard sanglant élevé. Entendez-vous dans les campagnes mugir ces féroces soldats? Ils viennent jusque dans vos bras, égorger vos fils et vos campagnes. Aux armes, citoyens, formez vos bataillons, marchons, marchons, cassons l'empire, abreuve vos ciments.
Now you see these boxes that are here across the front of the stage. As part of this community-wide celebration, there is this inclusion of donation boxes for local charities, collecting needed materials for groups that are doing good things in our community. Community organizations, businesses, and churches can purchase one of these boxes for just $100, choose an organization to support, and then display the box for collection of materials. You can speak to Sherry Mason Brown. Is Sherry available? Can Sherry stand? There she is, right here, back there waving her hand. She's got the pretty red scarf. You can speak to Sherry following this program if you or your business would like to host one of these donation boxes. Many here have already chosen to do so, and you can see that there is a list in your program that goes along with the charity of your choice. So we want everyone who's already done that. If you've already picked out a box and you're taking part of this program, would you please stand so we can give you a hand? We've got another group we want to honor. Pretty important group when you talk about an event like this. So we would like for every Rowan County veteran in the audience to please stand so that we can honor you. I would now like to bring to the stage Brigitte Helzer. We introduced her a moment ago, and again, she is the Executive Director in New England of the Movement of the French Abroad and is part of the Friendship Merci Train. Brigitte?
Thank you so much for inviting me to come here. I'm really thrilled to be here and so happy that you're doing this wonderful celebration. I was born in a little town in Alsace-Lorraine in November 1941. We were at that point occupied by the Germans. I was born on a weekend, so my parents had a couple days to figure out a French name that could also be spelled in German. So they picked Brigitte because it could be Brigitte in German. And it was in it wasn't until December 3rd, 1944 that we were liberated by the Americans. This was like 6 months after D-Day, and we were thrilled that the Americans were there. Excuse me. And from my window, I remember seeing the tanks, the American tanks, all in the square. So my mother decided to greet the Americans. We put on our Alsatian costumes and went down, and the soldiers were thrilled. They would take our pictures. I learned my first words of English, and then, you know, speak English, no, speak French, oui, oui. Chocolate, chewing gum was the main words I learned. So we were very happy that the Americans had come. 1947, my parents decided to immigrate to America. And so we arrived in November, we left on November 30th, my 7th birthday, in 1948. Got to New York December 9th, and waited all day for our 9 trunks to be released. And then my first image of New York was December 9th, and all the lights were on for Christmas. And it was just amazing. I mean, I still have this vision of the lights, Christmas lights everywhere in Manhattan. And then after a couple of months, in February, my parents were asked if I could be part of this parade in New York for the Merci Train that was arriving. So I got to put on my costume again and was part of the parade. I actually stood, and I have a picture of me standing in the New York boxcar in New York during the parade. So it was just a really exciting time. That's sort of it. Veterans who are here, because I don't know if any of you were in France, but there's such a wonderful memory of all the American veterans that we have. Thank you.
Pretty fascinating bit of history that you don't often hear. Thank you, Brigitte. I want to next introduce our keynote speaker for this morning. She's a graduate of the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill with a double degree in political science and women's studies with a focus on feminist political theory. She began her television career behind the scenes of The West Wing, followed by The Real Thing with the 2004 run for Congress. She has anchored local news on NBC Charlotte, hosted Lifetime's The Balancing Act, and was on the syndicated Right This Minute. And then she left television for volunteerism. That led her to Haiti, working at an orphanage and filming a series of documentaries that earned 2 Emmys. She's a motivational speaker and most recently completed shooting a documentary at the Give Kids the World Village in Orlando. You probably know her. She's pretty much a local girl. Please welcome Beth Troutman.
It was such an honor to be asked to be here today, not only because I'm a local girl, but because this event is about gratitude, and you can't help but be moved standing here in front of this boxcar, standing amongst these veterans who are here, and understanding that today is about just that, gratitude. And gratitude is really about the relationships that we have and that we create, and that's what this boxcar represents, the relationship that we had with France and the gratitude that we showed each other for the impact that we had on each other's lives. And I was thinking about gratitude and the small things, the small relationships that I'm grateful for in my life as I was driving here today. Now, I'm not a mother, but I'm the cool aunt. Y'all know what that means, right? You sugar them up and send them home. Well, I have a little 3-year-old niece. Actually, she just turned 4. And I was keeping her one weekend, and I was so excited about it. I was trying to play mom and multitask and do all kinds of fun stuff. And she was walking around the living room with this giant pickle in her hand, which I love. Like, I'm a salty snack person too, so I'm like, yes, this child is related to me. But then she walks up to me, and she has a dead fly in her hand. And I thought, oh my goodness, what am I going to do? Her mother is a germaphobe. She's going to head home with some kind of fly-borne illness. So I immediately took the pickle out of her hand, I put it on the counter, and I took her up and I washed her hands with antibacterial soap. Gave her that pickle back, and then she went about her business. And I finally thought about it for a second, and I was like, her name is Gray. And I looked at her and I said, Gray, how did you kill that fly? And she said, I hit it with my pickle. You've really got to be grateful for the little things, right? A failure as an aunt, but I could look at that and think, man, she's got a lot of thought in how to get what she wants accomplished, right? And that's what our lives are about, accomplishing the things that we want to accomplish in the ways that we want to accomplish them. And when they asked me to speak, they wanted me to talk about how important it is to live a life filled with gratitude. And they asked me to tell the story of how I got to that point in my life. And I'll tell you some lessons that I learned through the course of my career. My first lesson that I learned, and you're probably going to be shocked when I say this, never have a plan B, because you'll use it. Now when I say that to people, they usually drop their mouths open and say, what? But here's how you live a life that you're grateful for. You find what your purpose is. You find that thing that lives inside your heart, and you live it. Now, as you heard David say, I went to the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill and majored in political science and women's studies. Now, you can imagine my dad's face when I came home and said, Dad, I'm going to get a degree in women's studies. He thought, what kind of job is she going to have? She's going to end up waiting tables forever at Troutman's Barbecue. But what I did was a project on images of women in media and how they affect self-esteem. And so I knew that my purpose was to make people feel better about themselves, to feel better about the world they live in. So at 22, I thought, well, the way to really have an impact and affect self-esteem, if it's about images that we see, I'm going to go change Hollywood. Easy task, right? But at 22, I thought it was absolutely possible. So I graduated from UNC, I packed up a U-Haul, and I drove across the country with the goal of working for the TV show The West Wing. It didn't occur to me to have a plan B. And I will tell you, everybody told me that I was absolutely crazy. And I will tell you, you'll get that kind of feedback from folks who maybe aren't aligned with their purpose, from folks who have been too afraid to take that step that they really wanted to take in their lives. They're the ones who kind of want you to be scared too. But I drove out there to Los Angeles and I stayed at the Hollywood Ramada, which if you ever go to Hollywood, do not stay at the Hollywood Ramada. I bought a fax machine, which tells you how old I am. They still had fax machines back in those days. And I got the fax number for the production office for the TV show The West Wing. And I cold faxed my resume. And believe it or not, 2 hours later, I got a phone call from the people who were hiring at The West Wing. And they noticed my resume because I didn't have any grammatical errors in my cover letter. So way to go, North Carolina public school system. I went in the next day for an interview, and I started the next week as a production assistant on the show, which basically means that you have to pretend that getting Rob Lowe coffee is cool. It's not that cool. But I worked there for the next 4 years, eventually worked my way up to the assistant to the executive producer and director. But then I learned a very important lesson that I carry with me to this day. You've got to learn to laugh at yourself. Learn to laugh at yourself in this world, as my mom would have said. If you learn to laugh at yourself, no one's ever going to be laughing at you. They're going to be laughing with you. And I learned this pretty quickly when I got a phone call when I was sitting in my office at the West Wing. And on the other end of that line was a man who says, "Hi, my name is Mike Mickus. I'm from the DCCC, the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee." And I thought it was a joke, and I hung up on him. But he called back, and he said, "I'm serious. This is Mike Mickus from the DCCC. I'll give you my number if you want to call me back, but we would like you to run for Congress back home in your home state of North Carolina." The first thing I said to him is, "You realize I don't work in the real White House, right? This is a TV show." I was 27 years old. You gotta laugh a little bit when someone asks you to accomplish a goal like that. But I went to a producer that I was working with to ask some advice, and I said, "You know, I just got this call to run for the U.S. House of Representatives. Should I do it?" And he looked at me and he said, "Beth, people don't get phone calls like that. So even if you only get 5 votes, yes, you should do it because you will have run a congressional campaign at the age of 27. So I came back here, packed up my U-Haul again, moved back to North Carolina, and filed to run for Congress. And I was running against an incumbent whose son I dated in high school. That was a funny thing too. I had to laugh at that. Now, over the course of the campaign, I got to connect with people throughout the area. It was a 10-county district at the time, all the way from Mecklenburg County all the way over to Cumberland County. I got to connect with people, try to find ways to solve their problems. I was really aligning with my purpose of trying to make people's lives better, to make people feel like their lives are worthy. So I continue this process throughout the months and months that a campaign often goes. But then it comes to election day. Now you've probably all seen the news coverage. You know, after the polls close, you see the news crews at these big speeches that people are giving their crowds. They're holding signs supporting their candidate. What the news doesn't show you, when you start losing, people leave. They don't stick around at those things. So by the end of at the end of the election, I lost. I got 45% of the vote, which I felt pretty good about as a 27-year-old. But by the time I made my concession speech, the room was completely empty. I got behind a podium similar to this one, and all I said was, "Mom, Dad, thanks for your support." And that was the end of my congressional race. That taught me that learning to laugh at myself was incredibly important. And if you learn to laugh at yourself, you're immediately going to find fun in your life. And when you find fun in your life, you feel gratitude in your heart. One of my favorite sayings is from Ralph Waldo Emerson. You've probably heard it. Be silly, be honest, be kind. And it's so simple. Laughing at yourself takes care of the silly part. And I'll tell you how to get to the honesty part of it. And that comes with the next part of my career. After I lost the congressional race, I suddenly was unemployed. I didn't have a campaign to run anymore, and I was no longer working at the West Wing, and I didn't want to move back to LA and be the carpetbagger that everybody said I was anyway. So I was looking through basically the wanted ads on the internet, which the internet in 2004 is still relatively new. And I saw a posting for a news station here in Charlotte. They said they needed an opinionated female. And I thought, well, I've got opinions, I could do that. So I called the news director up and I said, "Hey, I hear you're looking for an opinionated female. I would love to come share some of my opinions with you." He let me come to the office and, believe it or not, threw me on the air live that night for a show that was called Fox News Edge. It's still on the air, I believe. It's still on the air here. 30 minutes, I had no clue what I was doing. I get to the floor with all the cameras there, and the floor director says, "Well, do you have your IFB?" And I said, "Well, if I knew what that was, I would tell you if I had it." Turns out it's the little thing you put in your ears so that you can hear the producers talking to you. But I went on the air, and apparently it went relatively well, because the next day, the president of the news station and the news director took me out to breakfast and said, "We're relaunching our morning show. We would love for you to come and be the host of that show." And I said, "Well, okay. I guess I can figure it out once I get there, right? Don't have a plan B, just show up and learn what you can. And if you can laugh at yourself every time you make a mistake, and you use it as a learning opportunity, and you move on and have a good time while you're doing it." So I spent the next 3.5 years as the host of this morning show, Fox News Rising. How many of you ever watched that show? Did you ever see that? I mean, this is years ago when I was actually hosting that show. Tons of fun. But here I was thinking I was pretty darn cool. I ended up hosting my own morning show and had never been on TV, had never hosted a show, and I was in one of the top 25 markets in the nation. I felt pretty good. And then I got offered a national morning show. And I'm thinking, wow, this is awesome. I'm feeling really great about myself. How many of you have ever seen The Balancing Act? Exactly. Here I was thinking I was so cool getting to this national morning show. The only person watching it was my mom. And that's where I learned the very important lesson of how valuable humility is. That was my lesson in life, to understand that our career paths, they really shouldn't be about us. They should be about the relationships that we create and the impact that we have on others. And in that particular job, I made friendships and relationships that I carry with me to this day that are incredibly valuable, that have given me opportunities to learn that I never would have received otherwise. I just needed to know how to be humble, and I needed to be reminded. And I will tell you, not only did no one watch the show, but our studio was next to a giant garbage hill. And that's actually true. It was a giant garbage hill landfill. I called it Mount Trashmore. But humility will help you understand that your ego shouldn't be in the way. And when your ego's out of the way, it makes it easier for you to laugh at yourself, it makes it easier for you to learn, and it makes it easier for you to be honest. Be silly and be honest. Then what about being kind? After about a year and a half at the Balancing Act, I was offered another national show called Right This Minute. Now, some of you may have seen it, it's still on the air, but it moved me back out west to launch this brand new syndicated show, which was pretty exciting. We started in 40 TV markets, and over the course of my 4 years as the main host of the show, we grew it to more than 200 TV markets across the nation. All syndication through all of Asia, through Mexico, through Canada, through the Caribbean. It was a brilliant learning opportunity and a great way to continue communicating with people and trying to have an impact on people. At the time, I was getting to host or be on the Today Show as a guest every couple of months, actually once a month for a while there. I mean, I was living the dream, right? When you're in the world of television, being on the Today Show, hosting a national show, that's what people dream about, right? But as I was living what I thought was my dream, my mother was living a nightmare. My mother back here in North Carolina was diagnosed with ovarian cancer. And ladies, you probably know if you've heard anything about ovarian cancer. It's called the silent killer for a reason, because it's usually not diagnosed until it's very late stage. My mother was stage 4. So here I am living this dream, but I only get one mother. We only get one mom. So I decided to listen to my heart and listen to all of those things that I learned. It shouldn't be about my ego, it needs to be about relationships. And I decided to walk away from a national TV show, and everyone again told me that I was crazy to come back to North Carolina. Luckily, I was offered a position here at NBC Charlotte to be an anchor, which brought me back here. It allowed me to work and to be here with my mother. So I thought I was going to get all of this time with her, this extra time. And about 4 months after I got back, the doctor said there was nothing left for them to do. So I took about 6 weeks off of the anchor desk, and I moved into my parents' home, and I became my mom's 24-hour caretaker. Because as my mother brought me into this world, she clothed me, and she fed me, and she showed me love and made me comfortable. And I knew that it was my honor to do the same thing for her. So I learned to do things that I never thought I would have the strength to do. Things like changing diapers and draining her lung and doing everything that I could do to keep her comfortable. But even in those dark moments, there are moments of beauty. I got to have these wonderful conversations with my mother. Heartfelt conversations, all the things that I wanted to say. And she got to say all of the things that she wanted to say to me. But one thing really, really impacted my life. And it's a message that I love to share with people, and I feel is my duty to share. About 6 days before my mother passed away, she was lying on the sofa, and I was rubbing her feet. And my mom was the quintessential Southern woman. Some of you knew my mother. She was beautiful. Her hair was always in the right place. Her makeup and lipstick were always just so. Her house was always perfectly clean. She drove a nice car and was very, very, very prim and proper, but also a funny lady, and also had a really amazing heart. But she's lying there, my feet in her feet in my lap. And she looked around the room and she said, "You know what, Beth? I was really stressed out about getting new drapes for this living room." And I kind of chuckled because it was such a mom thing to say. And then she said, "No, Beth, I want you to look at me. All of this stuff, it's junk. It's just junk. The only thing that you take with you is love." And that had a huge impact on my life. It was this beautiful gift that she gave me, and it was really permission for me to live the life that I always wanted to live in my heart, and that I want to share with everyone else, so that maybe people will get to live the lives that they really want to live inside of their hearts. So after she passed away, I was holding her hand when she took her last breath. And after she passed away, I went back to the anchor desk, And there I was spending the majority of my time talking about crime and talking about some of the worst parts of our communities, not the best parts of our communities. I felt like I was more a voice for fear instead of love. And so I made this decision, yet again, to walk away from what many people considered a dream job. And it's a perfect job for some people. I just knew that it wasn't perfect for me. It wasn't perfectly aligned with the human that I wanted to be. And it was making me not feel grateful. So I chose to walk away against everyone's advice and just take a leap of faith, assuming that a parachute would open eventually. And 8 days after my last day on the air at WCNC, I was in Haiti, living at an orphanage, working with children. And it was as if I was living exactly what my mother said. I had never witnessed poverty like I experienced when I first got to Haiti. I had never seen anything like this. But what I found was that the people there were so full of kindness, and so full of generosity, and so full of love, and so full of gratitude. They didn't have all of the creature comforts that we have, all of the physical things that we possess. But they did have this beautiful sense of community, and this beautiful sense of love, and this wonderful sense of gratitude. And when I came back to the United States, I knew that it was an important thing to share that kind of message. And that's where being kind comes in. Be silly, be honest, be kind. Show love, show gratitude, show generosity of spirit. And that's what I want to challenge you all to do today, is to actively live a life full of gratitude. Now, gratitude itself is a noun, but it requires action, right? It requires you to look at your life through a lens of gratefulness, through a lens of love. And when you think about your life and try to shift your mind into a state of gratitude, don't think about the stuff. Don't list the things that you're grateful for. Think about the people. Think about those relationships. Think about your ability to love. Think about your ability to forgive, both yourself and others. And think about your ability to let go of anger. Be silly. Laugh at yourself. Be honest. Approach your life with humility. And be kind. And I promise that will lead to a life full of gratitude. And just remember, the only thing that matters is love. The rest is just junk. Thank you.
Thank you, Beth. Now you're going to be entertained and inspired, I think, once again by Alexis Cowan and Adrian Smith performing America the Beautiful.
Oh, beautiful, for spacious skies, for amber ways of grain, for pearl mountains, majesty above the fruited plain.
lesser project. They were here, Anna Everhart's Merci Car artwork, so we do want to recognize them. So I'd like for the Silly City Fresh Artist Panel of Donors to please stand so that we can recognize you. Where are you? Well, here's someone. There's one at least. There's one. Thank you all. I'd now like to call to the stage Anne Lise Gallet. She was mentioned a little earlier. She is the Deputy Cultural Attaché in charge of educational and pedagogical cooperation at the French Consulate in Atlanta, Georgia. Anne Lise Gallet.
On the behalf of the Consulate General of France in the Southeast United States, it is my pleasure to be here today to celebrate the 17th anniversary of the North Carolina Merci Train. As I said, my name is Anne-Lise Gallet and I'm the Deputy Cultural Attaché at the French Consulate. 7 years ago, the French ship Magellan traveled to New York with 49 boxcars on board, one for each of the 10 US states plus the District of Columbia. The boxcar, which we are celebrating today, was welcomed by the people of Raleigh, including the Governor Kotzker, on February 8, 1949. Fast forward 7 decades, and here we are in Spencer, marking this monumental occasion and the friendship that it represented. Throughout the 20th century, trains have been part of our culture and history. France and Germany signed 2 armistices in trains. One in 1918, at the end of World War I, and the other in 1940, in the middle of World War II. Jewish deportation during the Holocaust was carried out in large part by train. These boxcars remain a modern symbol of war. Fortunately, the Merci Train is the opposite. It is a symbol of peace and solidarity. In the days following World War II, Americans sent to France what they call the Friendship Train, filled with food and aid, meant to help with reconstructing the country. As a token of gratitude, France returned the favor 2 years later by sending the Merci Train filled with cultural gifts and objects. It is a great pleasure to be able to see here today many of these objects at the North Carolina Museum of Transportation. Among these, I wanted to highlight one item in particular, a knot made from remnants of the French and American flags flying from the Eiffel Tower when Paris was liberated. The knot serves as a perfect symbol of our cultural histories and intertwined histories. France and the United States are each other's oldest allies. We have been there for each other in times of war, from the US Revolution to the storming of the beaches in the Normandy on the D-Day, for which we will celebrate the 75th anniversary this summer. France and Europe do not forget what they owe to the American people, and gestures, such as the friendship and Merci Trains, exemplify that even and in particularly in times of peace, we are linked together, connected by a long and enduring friendship. On the behalf of the French Consulate General, I wish you, the people of Spencer, and the great state of North Carolina, an excellent 49 days of gratitude, filled with the spirit of amitié, or friendship, which the train represented. Thank you, and enjoy today's celebration.
Thank you. I'd like to now call Dr. Kevin Cherry to the stage. He represents, of course, the North Carolina Transportation Museum for a very special moment in our celebration this morning.
Nous voilà Lafayette. Lafayette, we are here. It was July 4th, 1917. Colonel Charles Stanton stood at the grave of the French nobleman whom George Washington considered almost a son. And here, with that phrase that has come to symbolize the bonds between our 2 nations, Colonel Stanton pledged the United States' blood and treasure to our allies, the French. World War I then raged. Millions of soldiers on both sides of that world-changing conflict were bogged down in nasty, pestilential trenches. Soldiers brought to those trenches by 48 boxcars like that one. But hope was on the way. Fewer than 200 Americans, the first to arrive overseas, had just disembarked from a ship and were marching through the streets to the shouts of "Vive l'Amérique!" It is good to have friends in the time of need. When the American Revolution seemed all but lost, France had come to our new nation's side with supplies, with troops, with ships, with hope, our first ally. And our optimistic experiment in self-government lived. Indeed, it is good to have friends in the time of need. When France fell and was occupied by foreign forces during World War II, again the United States returned, because that's what friends do. But just because war ends, the related suffering does not. And right after the war, France was suffering. In 1948, individual citizens of the United States filled 700 boxcars full of relief supplies and sent them to our allies in what would be called the Friendship Train. It was, for some, a life-saving gesture. But we Tar Heels didn't stop there with that national effort. Less than 2 months after the National Friendship Train campaign, we launched our own statewide relief effort called Fill a Ship with Friendship. Sponsored by the North Carolina Council of Churches, county committees collected shoes tied in pairs, bedding, linens, kitchenware, soap, and candles. What one needs to live when you have lost everything. And we North Carolinians filled a ship with 3.5 million pounds of cargo, or about 1 pound of goods for every citizen in the state. This was the work of our own parents and grandparents. And we are commemorating those sorts of gifts with these boxes that you see here today. We hope to remember those extraordinary gifts by recreating it on a small scale here in our own county. Acknowledging the National Friendship Train, and more importantly, the sacrifices borne by our nation and our ongoing extraordinary friendship, the French, somehow from their war-ravaged state, managed to fill 49 boxcars full of thank you presents to be sent back to the people of the United States. Think of that. Individual people, men and women, mothers and fathers, many still living in homes broken from war, insecure in their food, worrying about the future for themselves and their children. They went through their homes and found knickknacks. Thousands and thousands of knickknacks and sit-arounds, egg cups and vases and toys and textiles to show their gratitude, to say merci, thank you, because that's what friends do. From New York, the Merci boxcars were loaded on rail flat cars for delivery to the States. Their running gear was too narrow to fit the American tracks. The North Carolina car reached Raleigh aboard the Seaboard Railroad. It was paraded down Fayetteville Street to Memorial Auditorium, where the contents were officially received on behalf of the people of the state by Governor Carr Scott. The boxcar itself was given to the 49th of the American Legion. There was a parade down the Capitol's Main Street with bands and military units. Then a number of these items were distributed to the counties, and most of the other items went to the North Carolina Museum of History. The boxcar that carried these gifts of gratitude was shown for a short time on Halifax Street in Raleigh, and later at the State Fair. And then it was moved to Wilson, North Carolina, where it was restored. And then it came here. Now we stand beside of the very boxcar that brought the thank you gifts from the people of France to our people here in North Carolina. This rough 40 and 8, made to carry 40 men or 8 horses to the front and back during the depths of the Great War, carried a nation's gift of gratitude across a sea and into our nation's heart. The French had answered our friendship train with their Merci Train. It's just a simple boxcar made to haul a few men and a few horses. But we all know that it's much more than that. We have come together to commemorate the anniversary of this extraordinary interchange. We are here to commemorate this lasting bond between two nations. And we are here to remember all who have sacrificed to keep not only our own nation free, but to also keep kindled the light of freedom beyond our borders. So before we lay our wreath today, let us now remember one of our own World War II veterans. Let us remember one of the best friends this museum has had, one of the leading citizens of Spencer and Rowan County, a true friend of many of ours, who also happened to be the Grand Marshal of today's parade, who passed away as he was getting into the lead vehicle this morning. He was our own beloved Clyde Miller. We are very grateful for his service to us, even up until his last day. I now ask that his fellow veterans remember his service and the service of all others who have given their all in the traditional honor guard form with a fired salute and the playing of taps. Please be upstanding.
Reset, off! Order, hold!
Please remain standing as our wreath bearers come forward. The Mayor of Spencer, Mr. Jim Gobble, and the Deputy Cultural Attaché from the Consulate in Atlanta, Madame Annelise Gallet. We will now have a moment of silence. The grass withers and the flowers fade, but their deeds shall live on. Thank you. You may be seated.
Simply, thank you all for being here. I don't know that any finer celebration could have taken place anywhere across our state today. It's been a wonderful day. So we go forth with a spirit of gratitude and mercy. Thank you for being here.